All right, I think we're ready to kick off. Hello, everyone. Thanks a million for joining us. Thanks a million for taking time out of your busy day. I know everyone's super busy this time of year, and we're delighted to have you here. My name is Brendan. I'm the Managing Director of Wolfgang, and I'm joined by my colleague, Sean, and Danielle, who are just over here, and we're going to be presenting as well. And we're going to talk to you about how you can win more B2B customers with a B2B SEO strategy. So we're Wolfgang Digital. We're a performance marketing agency working across search and social. Over the last few years in particular, we've been honing our skills around B2B marketing, and we've been lucky enough to win a few global search awards quite recently, focusing specifically on B2B. So I think we're ready to share some of our insights with you, share some of our strategies, and show you behind the curtain some of the case studies that have won some global awards for us. We hope to have this wrapped up in about 35 minutes. The session will be recorded and we'll send it to all the attendees after. That doesn't mean you can mute me right now and watch me at 2x speed in a couple of days. That's not a good look for anyone, so bear with us. We'll have time for a Q&A at the end, so if you do have any questions, feel free to just pop them into the Q&A, and if we have time, we'll try and deal with some of those at the end of the session. So let's kick off. So as I said, what we want to talk about is how you can win more B2B customers with a B2B SEO strategy. The working title for this presentation that our marketing team wouldn't let me use was SEO, the pipeline builder, because we firmly believe that SEO is a great way to build pipeline if you're in the B2B industry. It's a great feeder of the sales funnel for your sales team, and it can do that really importantly over the long term. And we've learned a lot about the B2B industry over the last few years, and we really feel that SEO dovetails really well with some of the characteristics that make B2B marketing particularly unique. So over the course of today's presentation, we're going to give you some bad news, and we're going to give you some good news, and we'll hopefully wrap up by giving you some great news. Now, the difficulty here, or the challenge here, is human beings are predisposed just to focus in on the bad news. You might be aware of something called a negativity bias, which is that people only remember the bad news. If you've done any performance reviews with any of your team, you'll be aware of this. People will cling on to that bad news, even if you sandwich it between some great news. But the best way to combat negativity bias is to be aware of it. So what I'd like you to do over the course of today's webinar is really focus in on the good news and the great news, because there's lots of that over the course of the presentation. One of the first things that we need to do when it comes to B2B is to really understand what makes B2B marketing distinct from B2C marketing. There's a lot of unique characteristics of B2B marketing, and one of them starts with the buyer, who's purchasing your products. And the reality is there is no single buyer, believe it or not. There's some great research carried out by Forrester last year, and they're able to demonstrate that 63% of B2B purchases involve more than 4 people. So there's a group of decision makers involved in making that purchase. And you've probably seen this in action. I'm sure you've purchased some software, some products for your own company or organization, and you'll be aware that there's multiple people involved in that decision-making process. It might be somebody from the finance team, or might be the procurement department, but it's rarely a single buyer that makes the purchase. And this is really important for us as marketers to be aware of, because it changes some of the tactics that we might use. And tactics that work really well in B2C might not be so effective when it comes to B2B. So for example, hyper-targeting doesn't allow us to target groups of people. Because when you look at B2B, we want to target that group, and hyper-targeting singles out that individual. And so moving away from hyper-targeting seems to be what we need to do if we're trying to target those group of decision makers. Another key characteristic, or something that's unique about B2B marketing, is the amount of interactions that happen before the purchase is complete. So the purchase process, or the purchase journey, is very complex. And again, Forrester were able to demonstrate that there's about 17 interactions before a B2B purchase is complete. So these interactions might happen on your website, with a potential customer engaging with some content. Maybe it's via your newsletter, maybe it's meeting you at a trade show, or maybe it's talking to some of your sales team. In any case, there's typically 17 different touch points before that user actually converts or becomes a customer. And again, as marketeers, this is really important for us to understand, because that essentially means that could be lots of ad clicks or lots of website visits before somebody makes a purchase. So lots of interactions that don't result in a sale or don't result in a conversion. And it raises a really key question, which is, does one buyer's convert and click get all the value? Or do we need to think a little bit broader and think about how every one of those interactions played a role in driving that conversion or driving that sale? So you can see how focusing on that last click or focusing on that converting click or converting interaction misses the bigger picture of the really important role lots of those 16 other touch points or interactions played in generating that customer for you. And here's the most upsetting reality for B2B marketers, which is 95% of your buyers aren't in market. Let me leave you with that while I just grab a drink of water. So that's a big one. And this is one of the biggest fundamental differences when it comes to B2B marketing. Only 5% of your market are actually ready to buy from you. This is from some fantastic research carried out by the LinkedIn B2B Institute very recently. So it's an awful lot of your potential buyers aren't ready to buy from you. And again, this raises some really key questions. One of the biggest being, do we go all in with our budget and target that 5% of people that are potentially ready to buy, or do we need to think a little bit broader about capturing that 95% or engaging that 95% before they actually become buyers? So what's the good news? Well, the good news is you've got a really valuable customer. The value of customers in B2B is a lot higher than lots of other verticals. And we're a little bit lucky in Wolfgang in that we have a great B2B portfolio, but we also have quite a large e-commerce and retail portfolio. So we're able to compare the value of these customers directly. What we typically see for e-commerce or retail is that the average basket value is about £70 or €80. When we compare that to B2B, the customer value is 10x, 100x, sometimes 1000x that value. So a much more valuable customer. So when you compare retail to B2B, you can see why retail marketers or e-commerce marketers spend all their time down at the bottom of the funnel in that conversion pathway. And that's really because the value of that sale is quite low. So e-commerce marketers need to be really efficient with their spend in trying to capture that conversion. They also have the advantage that there's a high volume of them in there. But in B2B, only 5% of our market are in that conversion, or they're in market. We need to think a little bit broader. And that's the reality for B2B marketers. B2B marketers need to live in the future. If only 5% of your market are ready to buy, you need to think a little bit about how you engage that 95% before they're ready to buy. So how do you engage that 95% so that when they move into buying, that they're coming to your business and not your competitor's business? And this reminds me of a well-known investment advice that you might have heard before, which is it's time in the market, not timing the market, and that works. So if we focus on that 5%, really what we're trying to do is trying to time the market. If we can think a little bit longer term, though, it means that we can focus on that other 95% and start to capture them or engage them before they become potential buyers. So what's the great news? Well, the great news is that SEO or organic search can capture 100% of that audience. So it doesn't matter if they're in the market ready to buy, they're searching on Google. Even if they're not ready to buy, they're doing some initial research, they're searching on Google. Even if they're one of your competitors' customers and they're troubleshooting their product, I guarantee you that they're searching on Google as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass you over to Sean Markey, who's going to take you through some of the details around how SEO can play a really key role as part of your B2B strategy. Over to you, Sean.
Well, thank you very much, Brendan. So we do know that organic search can reach 100% of the market, but I suppose that raises the question, how do we target that 100% of the market through organic search? Well, let's just familiarize ourselves. You're probably all aware of the marketing funnel: awareness, interest, action, advocacy. So PPC, paid search channels, they typically focus on the action, just trying to drive that final sale. Whereas SEO goes right from the very top of the funnel. In fact, even as Brendan mentioned, outside of the funnel, moving all the way down, right to the action point and then into advocacy. So the way we see that is those 95% of out-of-market searchers, potential customers, they're the people who are trying to educate themselves. They have a specific problem, or maybe they're even unaware of the problem, but they just need more information. They're searching for a very specific knowledge, and that's quite early in the user journey. Whereas if we look down to, say, action advocacy, where your 5% of the market is, they're the people who know what the problem is and they want the solution and they want it now, and branded searches too. So that's where the SEO comes in. We go for the broader part of the search funnel. So I'm going to bring you on to two really interesting statistics that we found through our research, is that in the B2B market, 80% of decision makers, they'll view at least 5 pieces of content while they're making their purchasing decision. In many cases, it's well over a dozen. And a similar amount of buyers, nearly 8 in every 10, they say that they don't even talk to a salesperson until they've had plenty of time to perform their own independent research, which makes us wonder the question, how do they find this content? What's it all about? So simple, through searching. That's what everyone does these days. Doesn't really matter what you're looking for. People's first port of call looking for information is Google. So when in this wheel here, the statistic I want to draw your attention to is that 27% of buyers, they are researching independently online. Those are the people that aren't quite in market yet, but they're looking to get into market. And that's where we need to use organic search to catch them. So here's a good example from one of our clients, the Digital Marketing Institute, of what our kind of content strategy, full funnel based, looks like. So in the awareness and interest phase, where that 95% is, we're building content, helpful content, content that answers questions. So from this example, what is digital marketing? What is SEO? Why is it important? People very early stages in their user journey, but what's happening is they're becoming more knowledgeable. And when they're getting the knowledge from your brand, they're building up a familiarity with your brand. So by the time they get down to the action stage where it's time to convert, they're familiar with your brand, they trust it. And then there you're sitting there with your paid search results, with your organic search results, you're doubling up. They're more likely to find you again. And because they know your brand already and they know your brand to be very knowledgeable, they're much, much more likely to convert. And so if we take a little bit step back to talk a bit more about the buyers, we realize there's four main kinds of buyers in B2B. You have the people who are searching for answers to problems that maybe your product or service could fix. Then you've got the people who they kind of know they have a problem and they have a roundabout idea of what needs to be done, but they're seeking more in-depth industry knowledge to make sure that they're going down the right path. And then there's people who know what the solution is, but they need to know a little bit more about it. And last, of course, is those people who are ready to pull the trigger, ready to buy into the product and service. So that last one of the 4 groups, that's the one where your 5% of in-market people are. So when you think about it, if we're to focus on the people who are already ready to purchase, we're really, really limiting our incremental growth potential. We need to be looking at a much broader picture overall. And quite interestingly, I spoke about how if customers are building up a familiarity with your brand, that will make them much more likely to convert, but it will also make them more likely to convert in a much bigger way, because a customer who feels like they've been informed, and if they're seeking out information, and if they feel like they've been well informed during the different stages of their buying purchase funnel, they're 3 times more likely to go for a bigger deal. So not only are they more likely to convert with you, they're more likely to spend more money as well, which is kind of what we want at the end of the day. But let's not forget something that Brendan alluded to earlier, that your customer base, and more importantly, your competitors' customer base, is not static. They will move around. Research has shown that 80% of B2B buyers, they've admitted that in the past 2 years, they've changed the supplier of some sort. So even though you might have them or your competitors might have them, they're always on. They're always in the market. A competitor might have customers now, but if they're not answering the right questions, not giving them the kind of content, kind of answers that they need to bring their business forward, they're not going to stick around forever. And that's where you have the opportunity to go and basically snatch them from your competition. And we do this by simplifying what is a complex buying process. So I really like this example. I'm a fan of what the likes of Salesforce and HubSpot do in terms of their organic content strategies. They really, for things like people searching for marketing automation, they understand that Google isn't going to bring you down to the bottom of the purchase funnel, because people searching marketing automation, they're much higher in the funnel. So they need that helpful content. They need to learn more about it. They're not ready to convert. Google realizes that. And you can see from the search results there on the right-hand side that it's very content focused. You can see there's a rich snippet there with people also ask queries. It's people will be clicking about that, they're at that phase. They're just trying to learn more. That's where we need to massage people down the purchasing funnel. So to move things into where SEO comes in, this is one of my favorite SEO stats that you're probably aware that Google uses ranking factors to decide who ranks for what in the organic search. So there's well over 200 ranking factors, different things that make Google decide who ranks and who doesn't rank. So that's an awful lot. But there's been a lot of research into which are the better ranking factors. Moz do every year or so, they'll do a ranking factors evaluation. And what's interesting is out of the 26 top ranked ranking factors, or the top 26 most useful ranking factors, they've discovered that 9 of that 26 are all content related to the questions you're answering, the words on your website, what you're saying to the customer. And furthermore, an additional 9 are related to what we call authoritative off-page factors. So things that are happening not even on your website, back links from other websites pointing to your website, brand mentions on other websites, entities like Wikipedia, things like that. So there's a lot more to the organic game than just what's on your site as well. But if we combine those two together, we realize that of the 26 top Google ranking factors, 18 of these, so 70% in total, are a combination of content and links. So that's really, really substantial, which is probably a bit of an eye-opener for people who are somewhat familiar with SEO, which is often referred to as a very technical game. You'll often hear people talk about technical SEO. So what we realize is that Google seems to be approaching, changing how it measures its algorithms. So where we see the direction Google is going, we see that they're really making a push to provide more authoritative information. And in the B2B space, more than most, that is key. So here at Wolfgang Digital, we've developed our own philosophy on what good SEO should look like. And we've kind of taken all these different tasks and ranking factors and things that can be done, and we've kind of whittled them down into what we would call, categorize them, should I say, into 3 main disciplines. So we have experience, which includes your technical SEO and your user experience, how people engage with your website. Relevance, which is largely content-based, the actual words on the page, the kind of articles you're writing, the information you're giving, and the questions you're answering. And authority, last but by no means least, that's the off-page factors, your links, your mentions, your wikis, your entities, that kind of stuff. So those are the big 3, I suppose, but there's lots of different tasks and factors that can contribute to all of them. But what we see is, sometimes people say, well, which one is the most important? And we say as SEOs, it depends. But if we look at Google's algorithm updates over the past year or so, now Google does literally hundreds of algorithm updates, making tweaks to the algorithm to see what they consider important in terms of rankings and whatnot. But every now and again, there's really big ones. And through our research in Wolfgang, when we looked at the 6 of the biggest algorithm updates that came in the past 12 months or so, we realized that the majority of them are focused around that pillar of relevance. So they're all very content-based. You'll see there's the helpful content update, matching to results to user, anti-spam content. So it seemed, and we've seen that in previous years, that more and more we're seeing that the big algorithm updates are pointing towards content relevance. But that's not to say that experience and authority aren't important. Not at all. In fact, we still see that based on these big updates, that they're still very much part of what Google deems important going forward. So a strategy built around the 3 disciplines, or pillars as some people like to call them, is very important. And we can see that Google is kind of gearing itself, moving towards a more content-based SEO. When we look at how the search engine results, how they kind of work in relation to user intent. So here's another example from the Digital Marketing Institute. So we've done a search for digital marketing qualifications. And what we see is that the Digital Marketing Institute, they rank on top of that SERP because they're providing information, because they are approaching user intent the right way, because they know that the people who are searching for digital marketing qualifications, they're up in the funnel. They're quite high in the funnel. They need more info. They want to learn more about it. They're not ready to buy yet. That's why you can see competitors whose search results are more, I suppose, sales-based. They're ranking lower because Google realizes that the users aren't quite ready to engage in purchasing yet. And you can see in the middle that people also ask, that's really prevalent in this search engine results page. And there's a reason for that, because Google knows people are going to click on these extra questions because they just need to feed themselves and arm themselves with more information. So we actually have a little case study planned that talks about how user intent can benefit SEO. So to go through that, I'm going to hand you over to my colleague, Danielle Clark, who can tell you a little bit more about it.
Thanks a million, Sean. Yes, so as Sean mentioned, user intent and targeting is super important in the B2B niche. This case study, success story that we're going to bring you through is one of our clients that operate in the international B2B financial sector. With that sector comes a whole host of challenges. It's obviously a very niche market. So one of the big ones is how are we going to target a niche that's going to drive qualified leads for what is a B2B crypto player? And then how are we going to balance that intent to drive quality also with the volume to grow awareness in what was an untapped audience, as well as sort of position ourselves as educational against huge non-direct competitors. And then we had to do this through only organic. We had a lot of limitations around paid search, and it was just off the table for this client. So the basis of our strategy was to look towards a model, the diffusion of innovation curve. So this is one of the oldest social science models. I believe it was created in the early 60s. And basically it was to communicate how a product or technology sort of spreads or diffuses amongst a social system or a population over time. Obviously the clients that we were dealing with, obviously very innovative new industry. So a lot of their audience was around sort of this 2.5%, which was the innovators. And we knew we needed to broaden that and sort of nurture the next generation if we were sort of going to grow their organic presence online. So we needed to look towards the early adopters, which was sort of 13.5%, and then even beyond that to the early majority at 34%. So the strategy for this client in a nutshell was to nurture their existing audience, which was largely the innovators and part of the early adopters, but then we needed to grow awareness amongst the untapped audience, which was largely the early majority. So there was four key elements to our strategy. One of them was more business related. The other three were more SEO related. So we needed to identify the top commercial performers for traffic and converting lead growth. So basically we needed to, what product was most valuable to the client commercially. And then the other three tactics that we used were quite advanced newer tactics. The first one being applying smart optimization and using vectors and competitor gap analysis. We then needed to utilize the power of entity building and internal linking to capture that high intent. And then we needed to overlay lateral content for lead growth. So the overarching theme, because it is sort of a niche industry and, audience targeting was at the very sort of core and centric to the strategy, was semantic SEO and optimizing for Google's natural language processing algorithm. So some of the results of this campaign, the digital results first. So obviously you can see, super high numbers, plus 320% uplift in organic visibility, for our target set of keywords that were very important to the client. The knock-on effect of that was a 450% organic traffic uplift, and then subsequently plus 1,000 uplift in organic leads. And I think these two metrics are quite important because, we were going after quality and volume. And I think, that just shows that we got the balance right, because if that was flipped and it was a plus 1,000% organic uplift in traffic and only 450% in leads, we wouldn't have quite got that balance right. And you can see the two graphs here, the first one relating to traffic, the second one relating to leads, and the little turquoise line is the year before, and the purple line shows the growth that we were able to achieve for this client over time in the most recent year. And then sort of the big result of this campaign, I guess, obviously commercial result, hugely important. We want to make sure that we're having, a business impact for our clients. So, 20 million, it's obviously, it's a massive number. It reflects back to what Brendan was chatting about earlier. B2B, the value of a customer is much, much higher. And I think this result really demonstrates that. So the client was able to inform us that the deals closed from just SEO leads in 2021 were closed at a value of $20 million. So if you wanted to put some sort of ROAS number on that, you're looking at something crazy like 22,000. So yeah, a great result from an approach that was very targeted to an audience in a very niche industry, really showcasing the power that SEO can have in the B2B industry. So I will hand you back over to Sean, who will bring you through how we build a B2B SEO strategy in general.
Thank you very much, Danielle. Good to be back. I suppose you're probably looking at those are some great numbers, and hopefully you're seeing the benefits of it, but you're probably thinking back at that's all well and good throwing all these lovely numbers at us, but how does one go about building an actual B2B SEO strategy? So hopefully over the course of the next few slides, I'll be able to clear that up with you guys. So if you ask an SEO, what do you do? What is your work involved? It could be, their answer could be any number of things, because just like there's hundreds of different Google ranking factors, there's literally hundreds of things an SEO professional could be doing at any given time to try and help improve search performance. But look, as we know, time is money, and everyone's time is limited, and we want to make sure that we're investing our time into the kind of tasks that will move the dial, that will drive the relevant traffic, that will help us get the leads that we sorely need. So how do we go about doing that, I suppose? Well, before I go into how we do it at Wolfgang, I would like to just flag something that I suppose it's kind of a something that you probably have heard about in terms of the SEO industry, and it's probably true in a lot of the industry, that a lot of SEOs can be very technical focused, in that their idea of a strategy is to do a full-scale technical audit of your website, looking at all the nuts and bolts, and then make a big list of the things that need to be fixed. Now, I'm not saying that this isn't important. I'm not saying it can't provide results. It can. But the fact of the matter is, if you're focusing if your SEO strategy is purely biased around a technical audit, you're not really seeing the bigger picture. And what I mean by that is that, remember those 3 pillars, those 3 disciplines of SEO that we talked about earlier. So there's 3 of those, and a technical audit only really addresses 1. So what's to say, if your tech is already good, you could be just spending a lot of time, trying to make small incremental gains that don't really get you anywhere. You could be trying to just, adding an extra 1 or 2% when you should be going after 200 or 300%. So how do we go about that? How do we stop ourselves falling into that all too familiar SEO pitfall? Well, our philosophy is you focus on the weak points, the places where you're not doing well, and we don't waste our time and energy and your money in the places where you're already winning. So when we start a working relationship with any new SEO client, we go into this benchmarking mode, a system where we grade you against your major competitors across those 3 SEO disciplines. So we'll do a sort of a small audit and analysis of the main tasks and factors within each of those 3 disciplines. So, and then what we do is we kind of, using a proprietary metric, we build up a score and compare that to your competition. So this is an example from one of our clients where we've done the assessment, we've judged their tech stack, and we've deemed it to be pretty good. In fact, better than the competition. In fact, when it comes to tech stack, generally speaking, that's all you need to be. You just need to be better than the guys you're up against. Similarly, but when we look at this client as well, we realized that their off-page, their authority, and their relevance of their content were lacking in compared to what their competition were doing. So that's where the strategy comes in. We decide that we don't need to spend a lot of money on the tech stack. We don't need to spend a lot of time worrying about the experience, but where we really need to put the work in is on the off-page and the on-page, the authority and the relevance. So what that means basically is that we would be looking at what some people might consider quite novel, the idea of a techless SEO strategy. But don't take my word for it. Danielle has a really good little case study to share with you about how you can actually do a really good techless SEO strategy and drive some data results.
Thanks a million, Sean. So yeah, this success story case study, if you like, is another one of our clients. They work in the financial industry. They are a global B2B SaaS brand. When they came to us, tech SEO for a number of reasons was just off the table. They came to us looking for help with a new government initiative, just to set some context about the campaign. The government website in the UK was sort of ranking 100% visibility for all of our target keywords. Their competitors were way ahead of them. plus technical SEO was off the table. So we looked towards content relevancy and the authority pillar, just to sort of, showcase that you still can get great organic results, even if you are sort of limited, because it is a common problem. Development limitations, frustrations about sort of resources can come up a lot with technical SEO. So this case study really shows the power of just honing in on two when you have sort of a base level technical health in place, and how you can still achieve great results. So, of course, our strategy was focused around getting strategic with content. And this was a new government initiative, as I mentioned, so we needed to bridge an educational gap. There was a huge sort of lack of, content awareness in the industry about sort of this new thing that was coming down on the audience. We used three forms of content, the first one being FAQ style pieces, and then we went into more detail in chapter guides, and then the third type was lead magnets. Obviously we know first party data is important, so for more detailed content we were gathering information at that stage as well. The goals that this content achieved was educating their audience groups on this new initiative, and of course increasing visibility and organic traffic, because it was predominantly an awareness campaign. And then looking over to the authority pillar, we knew that we were going to need to maximize our content efforts, and we done that in the form of link building. The tactic that we chose was skyscraper link building. In a nutshell, basically what that is finding a piece of content that has a lot of backlinks, creating content that is better to whatever that piece is linking to, and then reaching out to that publication and asking them to link to your superior piece of content over the piece of content that they're currently linking to. It sounds incredibly simple. It is, but it's very effective, and we knew that we were creating lots of great content with our clients, so we knew it would be highly successful. And if you look at some of the numbers, so over 6 months we were able to build 150 links to our content. But not only was the quantity there, the quality was also really, really good. So you can see average DA of 60 and above, and then 30% of those links as well were a domain rating of 70+, which is considered sort of really, really excellent. And yeah, I think sort of, because we were limited, tactless SEO, remember, we needed to make sure that we could integrate two of these two pillars to get sort of maximum results. So the power of sort of a content link combination can be really strong, and we call it sort of the trickle down effect internally. So over to the right, you can see an external piece of content. We built a link from that publication to our helpful content, which is in the middle. But then, we want to sort of internally link that to our commercial pages, ultimately so that we're sort of ranking for long tail keywords, but we're also helping sort of commercial terms, that are important to the business. And the goal that this achieved was driving leads for their software, which, it was an awareness campaign, but we are a performance marketing agency, and we're always going to, track leads and the business impact that we're having in any campaign. And yeah, some of the results, another really successful campaign. When we started this, their visibility was 45% and around that. So within 6 months to grow to 71% on mobile, 72% on desktop, it is a really incredible result. You can see here from the keywords as well, the number. So we were able to grow the number of keywords that they rank in position 1 to 3 in Google, which is obviously the top sort of spots that you can get, by over 1,000 keywords. And then the knock-on effect that had to traffic, again, is another really big number. So plus, 864%, again, in a 6-month period. So really, really strong results around organic visibility and traffic, which ultimately were the primary KPIs for this campaign. But beyond the awareness results, we were, tracking sort of lead growth. And we could see that in the same period, the leads for one of their core audiences also grew by 78%. And then for another one of their audiences, the leads grew by plus 233%, which is a great achievement for a campaign that wasn't centered around lead growth. And then sort of bonus, we overtook their main competitor. There was a considerable gap at the start of this campaign, and 6 months in SEO land isn't an incredibly long length of time. So to achieve that in 6 months was really great. And then we also outranked the government for their own initiative for a few of our terms, which was just a testament to how strong the campaign really was. So yeah, I'll hand you back over to Sean now, who is going to wrap up.
Okay, I just thought I'd just go back to that slide just to, if you could take home one piece of information from this webinar, it's that if you ever feel like overthrowing the government, SEO is the way to go. But in all seriousness, though, there's a common enough misconception in in marketing in general, I suppose, that SEO should be kind of considered as an optional extra, something that you do if you've got a bit of leftover budget at the end of the year. Maybe we'll invest in SEO, maybe so, maybe no. But from our experience, far being from some form of extra, we believe that SEO should really be the fulcrum of a digital marketing strategy, because it helps the other channels work so much better. Because when you are doing a content-led SEO strategy, suddenly you have richer content to use in your social media campaigns, your relevancy score goes up, which means your pay per click is going to be a bit cheaper. Better UX will bring about increased conversion rate, which is going to benefit every channel and definitely benefit your bottom line. And then you can also double up, on the search engine return pages. You're going to have your paid ads and you're going to have your organic kind of doubling the chance of getting that important click. And then, of course, you can also have much more personalized email marketing. So it's one of those things that it has, obviously, as Danielle has shown, there's some really great benefits of direct benefits in terms of results, but there's also a lot of secondary benefits to be had from a robust SEO strategy as well. So just to wrap things up, I just think we'll just go into like our major key takeaways. So the 5 things we really want people to come away from this is that, remember what Brendan said at the start, the vast majority of your audience isn't in market. 95% of them aren't in market. So you really need to think outside of the funnel. We know that B2B buyers, they buy more if they feel well informed, but on the contrary, they do need a lot of information. So there does need to be a commitment to informing them in the right ways. Your tech stack doesn't have to be perfect. That's a misconception. It just needs to be strong enough to compete, as good at as, if not a little bit better than what the competition has on their books. You've probably heard the phrase content is king. Well, in our opinion, content is very, and in Google's opinion as well, content still is very much king. And that's how you nourish and educate your customers and help drive them towards making the right decisions, which is converting with you. And authority is still a very important part of the SEO puzzle, especially for lead gen. And as it turns out, link building is still one of, if not the best way to build authority when you're in the online space. So with that, I just would like to wrap things up, and Brennan will just take us through the next steps.
Thanks a million, Sean. Thanks a million, everyone, for sticking with us. Sean mentioned our benchmarking report a couple of times, which we feel is a great starting point in defining your SEO strategy and gives you a really clear indication of how you're positioned versus your top competitors. If that's something that you're interested in, just send us a quick email to benchmark@wolfgangdigital.com and let us know a little bit about your business and who your top competitor is. And we'll very quickly be able to benchmark you against that competitor, and that will give you a really clear line of sight on what your SEO strategy needs to focus on. So let's jump in and see if we have any questions. I'll invite the guys back up here if you want to jump in here. I'll have a look and see. We've got a few questions there. Okay, that's a difficult one. I'm gonna paraphrase this one. ROI is difficult to prove in SEO. How do you approach that?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's something that we're faced with a lot as an SEO agency. For starters, as we know, yeah, like you say yourself, it's difficult. It's not just like a paid channel where you can directly correlate your ad spend to return on ROAS, should I say. So what we have to do is, because B2B and SEO, every niche is quite different, we have to look at it on a case-per-case basis. But what we do say is that we tend not to work on short-term projects, because SEO isn't a short-term game. We tend to look at 6 to 12-month projects where, ongoing relationships, so to speak. But the main thing that we need to know about SEO benchmark is starting off with where we are and making a realistic benchmark for the next 6 to 12 months. So we could be looking, say, hypothetically, we could be saying, okay, year on year, organic traffic and conversion is down 20%. So depending on what we need to do in order to get to where we need to be, we could be looking at, okay, within the next 6 months, we want to change that deficit, bring it from 20% to 5%, and then in 12 months' time, get it up to 15% in the green. Again, without, going into detail on a specific business, it's hard to say, but I suppose the key point here is that you need to be willing to play the long game. And that I'm not saying it can't happen, it does happen sometimes, but it's quite rare that you'll see instant results in SEO. It is a long game. I hope that goes some of the way to helping.
Thanks, Sean. Here's another one. So Danielle, you described techless SEO. Somebody's wondering if there's such a thing as backlinkless SEO, or if that strategy would work.
Yes. Backlinks are still sort of a core part of SEO, but there is over 200 ranking vectors. Sean went into that at the start, so you can sort of pull different levers and still get really strong results without backlinks, because there are other ways to build authority as well. So we look at strategies on a case-by-case basis. Sean and Brendan both mentioned the benchmarking assessment. That is something that we would look at. If we've seen that you were very low on authority score, we would probably recommend that you do some form of backlinks. But if your authority was quite good, we would focus more on the content relevancy and potentially the experience. So it is very dependent. The benchmarking assessment is a very good tool to see where you're at and where you need to focus the energy to get the best return.
Brilliant. Here's another great question. How do you go about generating content ideas for a client's blog? And how do you balance this with SEO and keeping the content unique, entertaining, and informative?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. But I'm looking forward to answering it. Well, first of all, once we finished our benchmarking and we realized, okay, say we identify content as a pillar that is underperforming, the next phase is to build out a content strategy and what we call a content calendar, which is looking at seasonality and looking what your brand needs to offer in terms of information. So that's the idea is to anticipate the questions that your customers are going to ask and get it in front of them in time for before peak search season, so to speak. So I think that's kind of the idea. That would be answering the first part of your question, I think, about how we generate ideas and how we balance this and keep the content unique and entertaining and informative. Well, I suppose how we go about that is that it's knowing the audience. You can't just jump into a content strategy working willy-nilly, unless you know what it is, what kind of tone of voice your customer responds to. So that's where we would have to work very closely with the client to see what their user base is all about, what the brand's unique tone of voice is, and how we can leverage that. Often we'll work very closely with the brand. Sometimes we'll send content briefs with the SEO essentials and the client can write them, or sometimes we write it. It's, I suppose, a collaborative effort. It's not a case where the SEOs just go off and write a bunch of content, go lash that on your website, we'll see what happens. It's much more collaborative, much more scientific than that.
Great. Maybe I have time for one more. Here's a great one from Maria. What should be your top SEO considerations for doing a new website development for your B2B business?
Okay, a brand new website.
Site structure, site taxonomy, make sure you're building it out, in a way that Google can easily crawl, index, and render and serve it to your user. Build it based on topical relevance, keyword research, have a good sort of category layout, subcategory, and just make sure it's sort of built from a really solid foundation of SEO.
I think that's very fair to say, because we've seen that once the website is live, it can be a lot harder to fix this. In fact, I probably shouldn't be saying this because give the game away, but a lot of our business comes from websites which were built incorrectly from an SEO perspective to begin with. So yeah, make sure you get the basics right at the start.
Brilliant. All right, we might leave it there. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us. I hope you got some value from that. If you haven't already, sign up for the Wolfgang Digital newsletter. We'll be running a few more of these webinars over the next few months as well. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday and take care of yourselves.
Thanks for coming out.